Perhaps the most photographed woman in the world, Diana, Princess of Wales, famous beauty and compassionate advocate for the underprivileged, lived a brief, intense life. Her ill-suited royal marriage, charity work and early violent death have earned her iconic status, and her legacy continues to inspire people from all walks of life. An exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery in London in 2007 showed a glimpse of why she remains so important for so many people.
Diana, in many ways, is a mystery and perhaps will always remain so. I think what this display shows is that there are different Dianas. There is Diana the mother, Diana the public figure, Diana the private figure, Diana the style icon. She moves through a number of different roles. You can never quite tell which is the real Diana. There are a number of different aspects. And I think that it's the interaction of these different facets of her personality that make her endlessly engaging. And people are returning to her image constantly and saying, who is she and what was she really like?
Diana Frances Spencer began life ordinarily enough for a member of the British upper class. Born into the Spencer family in 1961, she grew up with 2 older sisters and a younger brother. The Spencer family has been friends with the British royal family for centuries, and Charles once dated her older sister Sarah. A poor student, the shy Diana seemed happy with being a kindergarten assistant and working as a hostess at parties. But life changed irrevocably when the marriage-ready prince turned his attentions on her and sparked an unprecedented media frenzy. By the time their engagement was announced in February 1981, the loyal citizens of Great Britain couldn't get enough of Lady Di. On the 29th of July, a global television audience of around 750 million tuned in to watch the fairy tale wedding in St. Paul's Cathedral. In 2005, a replica of her stunning dress was put up for sale. The ivory silk taffeta dress, its train only 1/3 of the 25-feet train of the dress Diana wore on the day, sold for £100,000. The original dress had cost £9,000 back in 1981. One of Diana's most enduring legacies has been her deep commitment to charity work. A woman married to the future King of England doesn't need to work, but Diana wanted to do something meaningful in between raising her 2 sons, William and Harry. Children and the underprivileged were always close to her heart, and shortly after her marriage, she threw herself into charity work. In 2007, a new charity was launched in her honour. Called the Diana Award, it was the continuation of a memorial committee set up in the year after Diana died to recognise young people making a significant contribution to their community.
The Diana Memorial Award celebrates the fantastic achievement of young people who do extraordinary things. An award that is open to everyone, but an award that celebrates what I think was called this morning human excellence, people who do excellent things as human beings, people who can summon up the optimism and the openness and all the love of life that embodies the contribution that Princess Diana made to our country. And I think it's important that Diana's legacy is remembered in a way that young people can identify with, so that when award holders are doing their community service, they're in some small way echoing the type of work she did so well to help other people.
Royalty in England is traditionally associated with charity work, but Diana became passionately involved in a number of controversial causes, leading the charge in the battle to lift the stigma attached to HIV and AIDS.
HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it.
She made friends with lepers and the homeless and became patron of charities dealing with troubled youths, drug addicts and the elderly. She was also instrumental in the international campaign to ban landmines.
Diana was big everywhere. It was just quite incredible. Everybody knew her. And she could charm, you know, presidents and prime ministers in a way that I've never seen anybody else that's her equal, you know. And so she could achieve great things by getting sort of red tape, and that would just dissolve. And I mean, I remember her at the White House. She was just a unique person.
In 2008, more than 10 years after her death, Diana came in at number 6 on the list of people that children consider to be their role models, behind Richard Branson and Jesus. Diana's butler, Paul Burrell, released his long-awaited book in 2006, and it offered a rare glimpse into the life of a modern member of the royal family. Many readers were fascinated by the details of the love life of the princess, who divorced her husband in 1996. But Paul also writes about his employer's warmth and generosity.
A wonderful example of the princess's compassion and the depth of her friendship for her friend Rosa Monckton was that Rosa's 6-month stillborn baby is buried in a corner of the garden at Kensington Palace. This was an extraordinary thing for the princess to offer up, to bury a baby in her garden.
Since her death, it's been up to her young sons to keep her spirit alive. In 2009, William, Diana's oldest son, was made an honorary barrister, following in the footsteps of his mother, who was awarded the same honour in 1988. The ceremony took place in London's Inn Court. 3 years earlier, William and Harry announced they were putting together a special event for the anniversary of their mother's death. The concert was intended to raise money for Diana's favourite charities. They invited an eclectic mix of artists that reflected the musical tastes of both the young princes and their mother. The all-star bill included the likes of Elton John, Andrew Lloyd Webber and rap artist Kanye West. 70,000 fans turned up to Wembley Stadium on the day which would have marked Diana's 46th birthday, with millions more watching the event live on TV. The evening was a huge success. The magnificent gown Diana wore at her wedding was the beginning of a long love affair between British designers and the elegant princess. At 5 foot 10 inches tall, with a slim, athletic figure, Diana was a joy to dress and was always enthusiastic about fashion. As the 80s progressed, she began hitting her stride as a fashion icon.
When Diana sort of integrated herself into the great British establishment, things changed. She was an event. Wherever she went, her presence connected with the great British public. They loved her. She wasn't some sort of staid fuddy-duddy out the House of Windsor. She was a breath of fresh air. She was glamorous. She brought a film star quality. In some ways, she was a sort of ghost of Grace Kelly. And things were different when she arrived. She brought that glamour to every occasion she turned up.
She hadn't always got it right, however. Back in the early days of her marriage to Charles, her rather dowdy dress sense had left some fashionistas less than impressed.
At the beginning, when she was this, innocent 19-year-old, and she was wearing little ruffle collars, pussy bow blouses, which incidentally are very much back in fashion now, and a lot of tweed and very covered up. She was fit to be a princess.
Over the course of her royal duties, she began to be exposed to more exotic and extravagant fashion influences.
As she started travelling more, she started meeting more international women, and I think her style developed a little bit more internationally. She got away from those sort of Sloane frills and the little hats, and she started dressing on a much more designer level.
Some of her outfits were so striking that they were talked about for weeks after the event.
She wore a Victor Edelstein midnight blue velvet gown to dance with John Travolta at the White House, and I think everyone will remember that probably as the most iconic Diana dress ever, because not only was she wearing a stunning dress, she was doing something she adored, which was dancing and moving and smiling, and that's what fashion's all about. She really lived through the clothes.
2 months before Diana's death, she auctioned off 79 of her gowns for charity. In order to publicise the New York auction, she asked two of her favourite photographers, Lord Snowdon and Mario Testino, to photograph her in some of the gowns. Lord Snowdon photographed her in formal settings and Mario in his studio. In 2005, Mario hung the 15 photographs in an exhibition at Kensington Palace. Some had been published in Vanity Fair, but many had never been seen before. The shoot took place just 5 months before Diana died, and Mario remembers very clearly her state of mind.
I wonder whether this particular period was a difficult period in her life. I almost think that maybe this was the beginning of a new period. In that instance, when I photographed her, I think she felt very, very happy. I mean, a lot of people have asked me this in the past. I think that she just felt elated. She was entering a new period in her life, and I think all of us, when we're about to start something new, there's a certain excitement. What went on in those next 6 months, I don't really know, because people say that they were difficult years in her life afterwards, but the moment I met her, I have to say she was incredibly a very upbeat person.
Pleased with the informal portraits, Diana told Mario that her children were impressed with the accurate reflection of her personality. Both shoots proved successful in advertising the event, and the auction went on to raise £5.7 million for charity. WETV bought 4 gowns, and in 2007 they decided to auction off the silk chiffon Catherine Walker evening dress and donate the proceeds to a disadvantaged children's charity. The remaining 3 gowns toured as part of a public display. Diana's butler remembered how hard it was for her to give up one of the auction dresses.
It's very grand, very elegant, very regal looking. And in fact, this was the princess's favourite dress. And for a brief moment, she nearly didn't sell it. She nearly didn't give it away. She said, "This one I want to keep." But at the very last minute, she added it, and it was the final lot, lot number 79.
The silk chiffon gown, which Diana wore to the Cannes Film Festival in the late 1980s, fetched around $300,000 US. People who worked closely with Diana came to know that her choice of attire always gave a strong indication as to her mood.
Before she divorced Prince Charles, we could always tell if it was going to be a good day with Diana or a bad day. If it was a good day, she'd arrive wearing pink or red. That meant she was in a rosy, mood. She had her rosy specs on, sort of metaphorically, and she'd cooperate. But if you turned up at a job and she was wearing black, we'd think, oh God. She'd keep her back turned to us all day. She was very clever at handling the press and getting across the message that she wanted us to publicise for her,
Timed for the 10-year anniversary concert, some of Diana's most admired dresses went on display in Kensington Palace in 2007 in an exhibition titled Diana, a Princess Remembered.
We wanted to remember her achievements, and we have, I think, put here in an audiovisual exhibition, film, photograph and sound, a very eloquent narrative of her achievements as a princess, as a mother, as a fashion icon and as a humanitarian. And it's what she did with that iconographic status in inspiring charities, inspiring people, inspiring the British fashion industry, which we want to celebrate in this exhibition.
Included among the exhibits was the stunning black beaded Catherine Walker dress, the Victor Edelstein blue silk velvet dress she wore to the White House, and the white satin and lace 1930s style dress by Bruce Oldfield, which she wore to Buckingham Palace to dine with the Egyptian president.
Well, she was the most famous fashion icon, I think, for British designers of all time, and I can't think when there will be anybody else who would be such a fantastic ambassador for British fashion. And it made British designers, including us, very well known, and so that was incredible and a real privilege to have dressed her. She will never be replaced. There'll never be anybody quite like her.
A decade after her untimely death, the public response to the exhibition revealed just how dear she remains to people's hearts.
We've seen constantly the themes of inspiring, touching, accessibility, charm, always coming across. And I think people felt, even though they didn't meet her, that they knew her, actually.
When the world awoke on the morning of the 1st of September 1997, something had changed forever. At just 36 years of age, Princess Diana had died in a Parisian hospital after a dreadful car crash in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel early that morning. The driver, Henri Paul, acting security manager of the Hotel Ritz Paris, and Dodi Al Fayed, son of millionaire Mohammed Al Fayed, were also killed. Diana and Dodi had slipped out of a back door of the hotel to escape the paparazzi. But stalking photographers were on the tail of her Mercedes when it smashed at high speed into the 13th pillar of the tunnel. The British public were horrified, and the outpourings of genuine grief showed the depth of love that many people felt for the princess. Thousands of mourners from all over the globe sent flowers, donations and condolences. The piles of flowers outside Kensington Gardens reached a staggering 5 feet, and as the world mourned, British newspaper The Daily Mail started a condolence book.
Well, I think it's an amazing document. I can't think of any other personality who's ever had such a volume of messages of condolence. It was an extraordinary time, and we're so used to all the film footage that we remember back then, and this is a document of names, 130,000 of them. It's extraordinary.
Only 3 copies of the unique book were ever made, and in 2007, one of them came up for auction.
People only had 10 or 20 words to say what they felt, so in a way they're very repetitive and very simple sentiments. But the fact that people took the trouble to reply to the Daily Mail advert in such numbers is an extraordinary event.
Diana's funeral took place at Westminster Abbey on the 6th of September. The royal family conceded to public opinion, and rather than staging a strictly private event, it became a national public funeral. Hundreds of thousands lined the streets of London, while 8 members of the Welsh Guards carried her coffin. At St James's Palace, members of her family joined together to walk behind the carriage. With millions more around the world glued to their TV sets, that day remains etched in the public consciousness. On a website set up to collect personal histories, one Diana fan recently remembered how desperate everyone was to say goodbye to the people's princess.
I remember standing on the Mall with my father, petrified, to be honest, clutching him. And, you know, as the coffin walked past, and seeing people up trees trying to, you know, watch and join in and be closer to the event and, you know, to her, I suppose, to Diana.
The crash sparked many conspiracy rumours. Chief among their architects was the grief-stricken Mohammed Al Fayed, who claimed that his son and Diana were assassinated because of their plans to marry, and that the driver Henri Paul was in the employ of a national security service. It wasn't until 2004 that the much-anticipated inquest began. The coroner, Michael Burgess, was given the job of reading through a 6,000-page report and liaising with the French police. The driver, Henri Paul, was found to have a blood alcohol level 3 times higher than the French legal limit, but the paparazzi were still considered to have played a part in her death. That wasn't news to film star George Clooney, who had long ago pointed the finger at the media's insatiable appetite for celebrity gossip.
Princess Di is dead. And who should we see about that? The driver of the car, the paparazzis, or the magazines and papers who purchase these pictures and make bounty hunters out of photographers? In
the documentary, The Witness in the Tunnel, a photographer who was present the night of Diana's death defended himself and his colleagues. Pierre claimed that the subsequent vilification of the paparazzi was unwarranted and unfair.
we were not to blame, you know, for the accident in itself. Now, maybe Mr. Clooney is talking about the harassment of the press, and yes, in that respect, he may be right. Maybe there was too much interest, you know, from the press towards the Princess of Wales. But on the other hand, she was using the press a lot. It was not a one-way relationship. It really was going both ways, and especially that summer.
It's true that Diana forged a complex relationship with the media. She was very aware that she needed the press to publicise her charity work, and no doubt courted their sympathy in her split from Charles. She showed an intuitive understanding of the kind of photographs that would serve her well.
Those impromptu photo opportunities she created by herself, that famous picture of her on the edge of the boat alone, the Taj Mahal shot, all the way through, she knew the power for her image to get maximum coverage.
Other parts of her life Diana tried to keep private, often to no avail. Her relationship with the press seemed to reflect a conflict within her, between the shy introvert and the glamorous extrovert.
There are times when you think, this is the real Diana. This is the shy, slightly retiring individual, not really wanting to be the gaze of the public. And there are times when Diana seems in, for example, the image behind me by Mario Testino, obviously relishing being looked at, using the camera, really responding to it, projecting an image. There's always a tension between what's real and what's projected, and it's there to be teased out. This is what I think is on offer for speculation.
It's ironic to think that our very fascination with Princess Diana may have been a factor in her death.
And her life became a certain soap opera as she became estranged from the very house that she was established by. So she sold newspapers, and people were interested in that celebrity who can, you know, bring them extra revenue. So yes, of course, there was a huge amount of interest, and she delivered for them.
For many media people, the beautiful princess had become an industry, and her death spelt the end of their career.
When she died, well, the whole business just collapsed. You know, Diana was the centre of our world. I mean, some of the photographers would say that when they went to bed at night, all they could see was her face in their lenses, you know, their long lenses. They were so used to looking at her all day long that when they went to sleep at night, they still saw her face. And then suddenly that was all gone.
Perhaps the most photographed woman in the world, Diana, Princess of Wales, famous beauty and compassionate advocate for the underprivileged, lived a brief, intense life. Her ill-suited royal marriage, charity work and early violent death have earned her iconic status, and her legacy continues to inspire people from all walks of life. An exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery in London in 2007 showed a glimpse of why she remains so important for so many people.
Diana, in many ways, is a mystery, and perhaps will always remain so. I think what this display shows is that there are different Dianas. There is Diana the mother, Diana the public figure, Diana the private figure.
As once dated her older sister Sarah. A poor student, the shy Diana seemed happy with being a kindergarten assistant, and working as a hostess at parties. But life changed irrevocably when the marriage-ready prince turned his attentions on her and sparked an unprecedented media frenzy. By the time their engagement was announced in February 1981, the loyal citizens of Great Britain couldn't get enough of Lady Di. On the 29th of July, a global television audience of around 750 million tuned in to watch the fairy tale.
Diana, the style icon, she moves through a number of different roles. You can never quite tell which is the real Diana. There are a number of different aspects. And I think that it's the interaction of these different facets of her personality that make her endlessly engaging. And people are returning to her image constantly and saying, who is she and what was she really like?
Diana Frances Spencer began life ordinarily enough for a member of the British upper class. Born into the Spencer family in 1961, she grew up with 2 older sisters and a younger brother. The Spencer family has been friends with the British royal family for centuries and charmed wedding in St. Paul's Cathedral. In 2005, a replica of her stunning dress was put up for sale. The ivory silk taffeta dress, its train only 1/3 of the 25-feet train of the dress Diana wore on the day, sold for £100,000. The original dress had cost £9,000 back in 1981. One of Diana's most enduring legacies has been her deep commitment to charity work. A woman married to the future King of England doesn't need to work, but Diana wanted to do something meaningful in between raising her 2 sons, William and Harry.